graders, we are on Objective 1 practice of expressions, equations, and inequalities. Let's take a look at some practice here. We have 5 times negative 2w minus 4. So that is the distributive property. So we have to take what's on the outside, multiply it by everything on the inside. So a positive 5 times a negative 2, a positive and a negative makes a negative. Negative 10, don't forget the w. 5 times a negative 4 is a negative 20. So we have negative 10w minus 20. There are not any like terms, so we can't combine any together. So that is our final answer. Negative 10w minus 20. Good. Okay, which expressions are equivalent to this right here? So we have just a plain 35, a 30s, and then a negative 45t. So what we need to do is go through all of these and simplify them and see which ones match what we have up here. Okay, so a bit of work, but we can do it pretty quick. This is really just the distributive property. So we have to take what's on the outside, multiply it by everything on the inside. So 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 30 is 210. Don't forget the s, 210s. And then 7 times negative 45. Oh, I can't do that one in my head. 7 times 45 is 315. So it'll be negative 315t. Okay, does that match what we have up there? No. And you probably could have seen that by the second step. As soon as you got 210s, you know that's way bigger than 30. It's not going to work. Okay? So if you can see that sooner, save yourself the time of going through all the steps. Okay, distributing again. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 6 is 30s. Looks like it's probably going to work. 9 times 5. Or 5 times a negative 9, positive and a negative makes a negative, so that's going to be a negative 45t. Does that match what we have up there? It does, so we choose that one. Good, down here they put the negative 1 on the right side, but it's still the distributive property. Don't let that mess you up. We're still taking what's on the outside times everything on the inside. So that negative 1, all that's going to do is change the signs of everything that's on the inside. So a negative 1 and a negative 35, two negatives make a positive. It's going to be a positive 35. A negative 1 and a negative 30 makes a positive 30. Don't forget the s. And a negative 1 times a positive 45 makes a negative 45t. So by changing all the signs, we do get what we originally started with. It says we should only have 2 answers, so we should be good. But let's check the rest. Again, we have distributive property. So 10 times 3.5 is 35. 10 times 3 is 30. Don't forget the s. 4.5 times 10, negative 4.5 times 10 is negative 45. What they're missing though is the t. So that one does not work. If we had looked at that right away, we probably could have seen that without distributing, that it was missing the t and it wouldn't have worked. Okay, so again, look for that if you can. Okay, here we are distributing negative 2 to everything. We have our s and our t, so that looks good. Okay, negative 2 times 35 over 2. So negative 2 times 35 over 2. Those 2's are going to cancel, but we have a negative times a positive. That's going to give us a negative 35. We need a positive 35. So that negative 35 is not going to work. So our 2 answers are correct. And we can go on. Okay, simplify to create an equivalent expression. Okay, so we're going to simplify all of this and figure out which answer matches. Now really, this is just distributing twice, is what it is. So we need to take the negative 3 times everything on the inside of that parentheses, the 7 times everything on the inside of that parentheses. So a negative 3 times a positive 2 gives us a negative 6. A negative and a positive makes a negative. And a negative 3 times a positive 4k makes negative 12k. 7 times 2 is 14. Don't forget the k. 7 times negative 1 is a negative 7. Now we can combine like terms. We have just a plain 6 and a plain 7. We have a negative 12k and a 14k. All right, so negative 6 and negative 7, they are like, so we add, keep the original sign, makes a negative 13. Negative 12 and positive 14, they're unlike, so we subtract. 14 minus 12 is 2. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 14 is bigger, and it's positive, so it's a 2, positive 2. Okay, so we need a negative 13 and a positive 2. So if we look at the first one right here, we have a positive 2, a negative 13. Looks like that's our answer. Let's check the rest. This has an 8, not a 2. This one has 2 and 13, but they're both positive. We need a negative 13. This one has 2 and negative 7. We need a negative 13. This will be the first one. Okay, same thing, it's just a double distribution. Again, one of the main things you need to look for here is watching your signs. That's going to be where we make the easiest mistakes, because we're going to forget that two negatives make a positive and stuff like that. So watch your signs. So a negative 4 times a positive, remember that's really a 1z. Negative 4 times 1 makes negative 4z. A negative and a positive makes a negative. A negative 4 and a positive 3 makes negative 12. It's an interesting z there. Okay, then a negative 4 and a positive 5. Negative and a positive makes a negative. It's going to be a negative 20. Then a negative 4 and a negative 4. Two negatives make a positive. 4 times 4 is 16z. Okay, so we have some like terms again. A negative 4z and a 16z. Negative 12 and a negative 20. Okay, if it's hard for you to see the signs of these numbers, I would rewrite them, put the negatives in the parentheses. Okay, the more you do this, the easier it's going to be for you not to have to do that. But if you're struggling to understand that that's a negative 12, put the negative in parentheses. Same thing with the negative 20. Okay, so we have our like terms, negative 4z and 16z. They are unlike, so we subtract. 16 minus 4 is 12. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 16 is bigger, it's positive. It's a positive 12. Don't forget the z. Then we have negative 12 and negative 20. They are like, so we add. 20 plus 12 is 32. Keep the original sign, which is negative. So we have 12z minus 32. So we need a negative 32 and a positive 12. That's right here. That is the only one that has what we need. Moving on, our last link in Objective 1. Which expressions are equivalent to these? So we have to simplify this, all of these, and see which ones match. Okay, so again, there's a lot of parentheses here, but we're really just distributing. And then we have this 1 that's on the outside of the parentheses, so that's just going to be added on at the very end. So 6 times 2 is 12. Don't forget the r. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. And then we have this 1 on the end. We have some like terms, our negative 6 and our positive 1. They're unlike, so we subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 6 minus 1 is 5. 6 is bigger, it's negative. So that becomes a negative 5. So it looks like that matches exactly what we needed. Let's check the second one quickly to make sure we didn't make a mistake. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 4 times negative 3. Two negatives make a positive. It's going to be a positive 12r. And then we add 3 on the end. Then our 3 and our negative 8, those are unlike, so we subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 8 minus 3 is 5. 8 is bigger and it's negative, so that's going to be a negative 5. So we have 12r minus 5. So they both turn out to be what we needed at the beginning. So they're both correct. Notice it says choose all answers that apply. It's not just one answer. It can be both of those. Good. Okay, one more like that. Now this is not simplified and these are not simplified. Actually the second one is, but the first one's not. So sometimes you might have to simplify the original and the choices and see how they match. Okay? So let's distribute. Up here we have parentheses. What's on the outside has to be multiplied by everything on the inside. So 3 times a negative 2, positive and negative makes a negative, 6a. Again, a positive 3 and negative 4 makes a negative 12. And then on the end we have this 3a. It's not in the parentheses, so it does not get multiplied by 3. Only what's in the parentheses gets multiplied by 3. But now we do have some like terms we can add together. The negative 6a and the positive 3a. They're unlike. You subtract. 6 minus 3 is 3. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 6 is bigger, it's negative, so it's going to be a negative 3a. So that's what that simplifies to. Down here, it's almost simplified. We have the negative 6a and the positive 3a. Combine those together, they're unlike, so we subtract. 6 minus 3 is 3. Keep the sign of the bigger number. 6 is bigger, it's negative, so it's going to be a negative 3a minus 12. Okay, now that is actually the same as this one. It's a negative 12, a negative 12, a negative 3a, a negative 3a. Doesn't matter that the order is switched. Those are the same. So A would work. B is close, but the signs are the opposite. It's a positive 3a and a positive 12. We need a negative 3a and a negative 12. So it's just A for that one. All right, that's all the examples on Objective 1. Good luck on your practice.